Welcome back. You're now watching the political segment on The Weekend Show. My name is Andy Madaki. With the signing of the age reduction bill, popularly called the Not Too Young to Run bill, lots of young Nigerians have now decided to be actively involved in politics, not just running for election, but participating widely and holding government accountable. However, with the reports of the recently concluded primaries in most parties, we still see that a lot of young people are still being kicked out of the race because they don't have the same amount of money as the older generation. And they also don't have maybe the political gravitas and structure which the older generation claim to have. However, with the rising tide of social media, more people have been involved and vocal. The 2023 election is going to be a very crucial time in the Nigerian politics because at this time we're getting new sets of leaders in most of the states in different offices. There are 1,491 positions being contested for. What's going to happen in these elections? What do we want? What questions are we asking? Are we only focusing on two parties, or are there other parties and people we should focus on? We've also had a lot of people say, this 2023, don't focus on party, vote for people. Having this conversation with me today, I have Honorable Teheman Tiligedo, who is an engineer, a seasoned project director, government relations expert. His professional track record spans 2 decades, during which he has been involved in conceptualization, design, planning, and execution of large-scale, high-value infrastructure projects in Nigeria and the United Kingdom, including the West Coast Route Modernization Project, which was the largest infrastructure project in the United Kingdom at that time. His works in project and government relations spans oil and gas, power, agriculture, and hospitality. In 2019, Teheman made his first foray into politics when he contested for a seat in the National Assembly, representing Vandekia Konshisha Federal Constituency in Benue State. He's now aspiring for the position of the office of Governor of Benue State in 2023 as the flag bearer for the African Democratic Congress. Honorable Teheman Tiligedo, welcome to the Weekend Show.
Thank you, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's actually a pleasure. So they say for some of us who are now above 30, we are no longer youths. But in politics, we have national youth leaders at 50s. And right. So I'm always happier, and this is a bias, which I shouldn't have, to have younger people to share their opinions about politics and what they intend for Nigeria, because we're no longer the leaders of tomorrow. We are now the leaders. In 2019, you tried running for the Federal House of Reps position. What even made you get into politics after your brilliant experience and work which you've done in the engineering and projects spaces? Why politics?
Thank you, Andy. It's probably the question I get asked the most. Why bother? Why do you think it can work? And for me, it's really a call to service. You know, we sing the national anthem every day, arise, O compatriots, Nigeria's call, obey, to serve, you know. And so my involvement in politics is actually a response to a call. And that call is basically to address a need. So it's a passion that I have, and compassion for my people. And I think that it's important, especially now when the country is in the state that it is, that all hands are on deck to address the situation. I'll tell you a funny story. A couple of days ago, I was having coffee with my friend, and he narrated a story that is simply titled, "So What Next?" It's an animal farm story. So there's animals in a farm, and one day the rat is running along and comes across a mousetrap. Runs over to a chicken and says, "Hey, look what I found. I think we have a problem." The chicken crowed, said, "No, I don't think that problem is mine." He ran to the goat, same response. Ran to the cow, same response. The cow mooed, saying, "I've never seen a cow caught by a mousetrap." And so that night, the trap snapped. The farmer's wife runs to see if a rat has been caught. But instead, it's a snake caught by the tail, which bit the farmer's wife. Now she has to go to the hospital. The farmer rushes her to the hospital. She spends the night, comes back the next day with a fever and a craving for nothing other than chicken pepper soup. So the farmer goes, grabs the chicken, makes some nice pepper soup for his wife, but she's still not getting better. Visitors start trooping in. And now we need to show some hospitality. And he goes and grabs the goat. People eat, the wife still doesn't get better. Very unfortunately, she passed away. And there's a funeral, and now the cow has to go as well. So from a problem that seemed to be nobody's problem except the rat's problem, everybody ended up being a victim. And so I think that it's no longer time to be aloof concerning the Nigerian problem. It's time for all of us to get involved, because whether we like it or not, even if we don't do politics, politics is doing us. And that's why I'm doing politics.
So that's brilliant. And so beyond trying out in 2019, you've commendably stepped higher, and you're going for the jugular. You're going for the position of governor of Benue State. I also understand that you were in a different party, and you stood very high chances knowing that your party had zoned it to your constituency. Mm-hmm. How was that experience which led you into running, changing parties and still being in the race?
Okay. Every party has only one ticket to give. And I think that our democracy is at a stage where political parties aren't necessarily based on ideologies. You know, I consider them more fraternities, really. So it's not a case where you know that this party is to the far right or to the far left, and so your joining any party is very focused on the ideology of that party. Really, these parties are serving as platforms where people get an opportunity to have political expression and, if they so desire, to contest elections. So I started out the race in the APC, as you said. However, every party has its internal mechanisms and dimensions. And I noticed that I may not have as good a chance as I would like or expect to contest for the ticket of that party. But I didn't set out to become governor of APC or any party in particular. I set out to become governor of Benue State. And so the onus was now on me to seek a field where I can be allowed to play. You see, that's the thing. I think that we have this mind trap as politicians, especially as young people coming in, that says that we need to fit into a certain mold or a certain status quo. And once that doesn't happen, we give up. But I think we need to do more, because that sent me into a soul search. What am I doing in politics? What's my motive? And what's my motive for even joining any political party that I'm joining? Is it because I know people there? Is it because I think that, oh, there's some godfather that can give me a blessing? Or am I joining because I want to express myself politically? And so I found ADC to be a place that was very inclusive in its policy, where demographics that would typically be neglected, you know, which is youth, women, physically challenged people. A party like ADC had a seat at the table for such people. And when I came in, I found that I had a seat at the table. And so it encouraged me to say, okay, let me put out my ambition to this party as well, and let me contest in their primaries. I was given a level playing field, and I emerged as a candidate.
So now you're running for the position of executive governor of Benue State. Why you? Why do you think you're the man for the job?
Thank you, Andy. I tell many of the people that I speak to that if I did not think that I could address the problems that Benue State has, or even after the problems are addressed, turn around our fortune to development, then I won't be contesting. I think that there's a need for every leader today to come to the table with a certain level of competence and also a certain level of empathy. I think empathy is lacking a lot. It's an interesting concept to toot one's horn, but I think that that empathy is what I lead with, my passion for my people, which is evidenced throughout my life, in my interaction with my community, my interaction with even the elders as well as the youth. And on the competence side, you know, it's an interesting angle that as an engineer, we're trained to be solution oriented. You look at a problem, you analyze it, and you prefer a solution. So I bring that to the table. It's actually the first time that Benue State would potentially have an engineer as a governor. So that comes there, but it's not just the education as well. It's the experience, the work experience. You know, I've worked in project operations, project leadership. I've worked on government policy issues, you know, as far as pertain to the various sectors that I've worked in. You know, so I believe that I bring all these skills and a very solid network built both in my school years as well as my working years, which would allow Benue State to enjoy all these things that I've gathered.
So, interesting twist to the conversation you brought in when you say most of these parties are more fraternities. I hadn't seen it that way, but it does make a lot of sense, which is why most of them have this conversation about structure. 2023 is going to be very pivotal because the last time we had this was in 2014, 2015 when the APC came together and formed the party.
Correct.
And so a new system was created. In 2023, do you feel having party structure or the demands and cries of the people is what makes the difference? Do you think this conversation about having local structures and party structures plays any major role in the next election?
Well, it'll be naive to say that it doesn't. However, we can't speak about it in the abstract, you know. When I hear things about structure, many people haven't actually thought, what is that structure? It's like we're sitting in this building, but we've not thought about what the building blocks actually are.
Oh, the engineering is coming out.
Right. So what are these political structures we're talking about, Andy? They're human beings. They're human beings. If the human beings who are involved in politics today see that there's a need for change, then their choices will be in line with their conviction. And they become the structures to build and create that change that we need. So 2023, I believe, is going to be about structures. But these structures are not fixed structures. Human beings can change their minds. And I believe that we're going to see a lot of people changing their minds to actually work for candidates as opposed to political parties. Because guess what? I've never walked down the street and met a man or woman who said, hi, my name is PDP or APC or ADC or Labour Party. You know, you can't go to a Labour ward and see a woman deliver a child ABGA. You know what I'm saying? So these parties are made of people. People have noticed that, hey, this is the man who we voted who did not deliver the dividends that he was supposed to. And so we're not going to vote him again. We're going to vote for this man or this woman who shows good promise and who we can trust. So it's going to be about who the people can trust to enter into a social contract with. I believe that's what 2023 will be.
So talking about priorities, I remember, I believe in the power of three. And so I remember in 2015 when President Buhari was running, he had three major focus areas, which was insecurity, corruption, and I think the economy. And now everybody can say what they feel about how the last 7 years
Sure.
have been. What are your 3 priority areas if and when you become governor of Benue State?
Insecurity cannot be ignored. Every leader that is, or aspiring leader, especially going into the 2023 election, must have insecurity as a top priority. Nigerians are living in fear, Andy. You wake up and you don't know what's going to happen. You're watching the news, lives are being lost. It's hardly even making the news anymore. So insecurity is a major area. We must concentrate on it. I wonder how much is being done behind the scenes to address some of these issues, because it leaves a lot to be desired for some of us. You know, the extent to which things are being discussed. I hear security analysts come up with potential solutions. You know, people are talking about hiring mercenaries to address the situation of insurgency. But we don't really hear what the outcome of that is, if it's even being discussed at the levels that it should be. You know, so I think those areas are there to be considered. How much are we leveraging technology? Where's our surveillance? If you don't know what's going on in the country, how are you going to address it? So we need to hammer on this issue of technology to address surveillance, early warning systems. We need to look into rapid response. We need to look into accountability on security issues, because we hear something happens and then we hear nothing. It's absolute silence. So insecurity for me will be a major issue, but I'll address it also taking into cognizance some of these issues I've mentioned. Economy is another one. We're suffocating right now. Nigeria's fiscal health is life support machine, if you like. It has to be looked at. Is it spending? Is it revenue? I think it's a bit of both, actually. You know, we need to look at ways in which we can be more prudent with our spending, cut costs. We need to look at ways where we can increase our revenue. As a country, we're still a little bit tunnel visioned in our revenue generating activities. As a state in Benue, revenue is 15% internally generated. The rest we rely on from federal allocation. As a federation, it can't work like that. The whole idea is for autonomy to thrive in this sort of system, and it's not. So economy is another one. These two, addressing them will snowball into a very, very positive effect on other areas. So I'll sum the rest into a big 3, if you like, a big third pillar, which is education, healthcare, agriculture falls into the economy. So these will be the pillars.
Okay, so I like the linkage between technology and insecurity. That's a very, very brilliant take to it. But talking about practical solutions now, at least 1.2 million people are now internally displaced persons in Benue State. We've had farmer header crisis. Before it went around the nation, we suffered it the most in Benue State. And I say we because I'm also from your state, and so this is of particular interest. So you have these communal clashes and farmer header crisis. It's now no longer being as reported as it was. Doesn't mean it's gone. How do you intend to tackle this?
Definitely, some of the points I mentioned under insecurity also fall into this category. But this problem is a problem between two groups of people, as you've rightly said, farmers and herdsmen. So there is an absolute need for very high level and very, very hard dialogue to happen between the leaders of these people. There needs to be a committee set up of some sort that sits down on the table to look at what the issues are. What are the issues? We just hear farmer herder crisis. What's the problem? This needs to be articulated and spelled out. and solutions addressed concerning each of them, and people need to be held accountable for it. Local communities where these things are happening have leaders. They have elders, they have youth leaders. What is the role that these people are playing? How are we bringing them into the conversation? I hear a lot that politics is local. Security is very local as well. We need a local security architecture that actually prefers solutions, because it's going to be different for the different areas. And it's very important to note that this cloak of farmer-herder crisis has also allowed a lot of proliferation of other mischievous criminal activity. So we need to understand where the problems are coming from, because if you unpack them, you'll find that you can put it in buckets of economic motivation, people who are doing it for money, people who are doing it because of ideology, or people who are doing it because of ethnicity or something. We need to unpack it, because the solution to each of these things will be different. And we have to look at it on that level. So, dialogue, technology, and this technology now would lead us to understand that where a problem has been identified and someone has been convicted, let's say, of a crime, justice doesn't only need to be done, but it needs to be seen to be done as well as a deterrent for anyone else who would be encouraged to do it. It
strikes me that these conversations are not even just about Benue State. These are conversations that are about all of Nigeria and what's affecting the whole country. We are blessed with nice arable land. We have good weather. At least we understand the weather. Benue State is the food basket of the nation. The yam in Benue State is unrivaled. Absolutely. I grew up in a house with about 6-7 orange trees because that's how it is.
Right.
However, about 40 to 60% of our agricultural products are wasted, basically because there's nobody to take it and there's no form of preservation. And so you spoke about manufacturing. So I'm going to tie in your point about the economy of the state to agriculture, production, logistics, and manufacturing. What can be done to ensure that the farmers' yields are not going to waste? What can be done to ensure that there's a supply chain that ensures that it goes to other parts of Nigeria where they are already suffering issues of desertification and the likes, which is causing urban migration?
This is the kind of question I expect from a Benue man, because it's a major concern for us. We are the food basket of the nation. I'll start off by saying that if properly managed in agriculture, there's actually no such thing as waste, because everything about a fruit, if you take the mango for instance, everything about this mango has a use, from the peels being used as stock feed to mango juice. I discovered the other day that there's mango wine, So these kind of things are things that require industrialization and processing. So we first need to look at the whole thing as a value chain, starting from production. Are we producing at an optimal capacity? Can we improve on our seedlings, for instance? Can we have better fertilizer? Can we boost our production? So now we encourage people to farm. Let's bring back dignity in labor. Let's organize the farming sector. Let's not just throw away this issue of non-mechanized farming. Let's also look at that, because if you look at developed countries now who are doing well in agriculture, you see that those small farms feed the larger farms. Okay, we move into mechanization, and then we need to try as much as possible to create hubs. When we create hubs and we see that we can actually achieve the kind of yield that would feed a processing plant, then you do that. You go to a place like Zaki Biam, where they're farming yam at a phenomenal rate. Make sure that there's a yam processing plant there. What is it doing? Flour. It's doing yam chips. All these things is there. So there's offtake for production. Once that happens, we can't neglect infrastructure. So the civil engineer in me comes out again, because you need to create infrastructure to actually evacuate this produce. The onus must be on the government, but not only the government, private sector, to identify end users so that after production, we know where these products are going to. I think that the private sector hasn't been incentivized enough to come into agriculture in Benue State, and that's an area that I'll definitely focus very heavily on, to bring private sector in, stimulate that particular economy, and I believe that we'll see a significant boost in what we're generating. Rwanda, which is only 2/3 the size of Benue State, I was stunned to find out that in 1 year alone, they exported over $400 million worth of agricultural produce. You can imagine what that kind of money will do for Benue State. So that's my take on agriculture.
So just this week, International Youth Day was celebrated, and a lot of the conversations revolved around intergenerational collaborations. There's a lack of trust in the system. People don't trust politicians, young people don't trust the older people and the likes. But we can't run a government or a country without collaboration of the old and the young. How do you intend to build and bridge this gap?
As you asked that question, I remember a song that a famous Nigerian musician, Fela, he sang. He said, "Teacher, don't teach me nonsense." So it's not just about transferring knowledge, but what knowledge are you transferring? There is a good crop of older citizens who have served this country, who have a lot to pass down to the younger generation. The younger generation must identify the same way that when you want to go to school, especially students who are transitioning from, say, secondary school to university, or from first degree to a higher degree, you take your time to assess the institution that you want to go to, because you know that your choice will determine the quality of learning that you get. Young people must identify who the older generation of politicians and leaders, civil servants, professionals are, who can give us quality advice and education. It so happens that many of those people are not as flashy when you look at maybe their wealth status or their level of noise making in the society. So you find young people want to rather be mentored by people who have,
Well, loud and austere.
Loud and austere, and also may have got their wealth from questionable means. So a scorpion hatches an egg, it's likely to be a scorpion egg, So you find that young people are already evolving into the same kind of leaders as before. So I think that for me as an individual, I've identified some of these elders that I feel have something positive to offer. They are my political mentors, they are my professional mentors, and I would want to scale that in a way that I myself am able to provide positive mentorship to a younger generation than mine, and also be able to convince my peers as to why it's important for us to get guidance from the right leaders. I remember the two men that come to mind when I study history and faith, things of the faith, and it's Caleb and Joshua. They became very, very critical for the transition that the children of Israel were going to undertake as they were journeying from Egypt into the promised land. So we do need Joshuas and Calebs today, and it's important that we take them seriously.
So let's talk about some challenges which you will face during the upcoming election. Since 1999 till date, we've now had uninterrupted democracy, which means your state, for instance, you now have two past governors, Governor George Akume and Gabriel Suswam, who have been previous governments, and now Samuel Otom. They are, in all the states, the governors between 99 to date are the ones who control what happens. They control the party politics. They're the party leaders in their states and the likes. These are the people who will be the major factors you are either with or without or up against. And they do hold a lot of political sway in their states, and in Benue State particularly, in your state. How do you plan to deal with this?
I would rather not look at it as being up against them. They, apart from being past governors, are also indigents of Benue State. Whatever happens in Benue State affects them, and I believe that they're just as desirous that Benue State should thrive as I am, or the average Benue indigent should be. And so my encouragement to them, and I have had engagements with them, my encouragement to them is to be loyal to Benue State first. Each party can only give one ticket, as I mentioned earlier on. So now that tickets have been given across parties, it is required, I believe that it is their obligation to ensure that Benue State falls into the right hands. And so that's my line of conversation with them. I believe that that as human beings and as concerned citizens, that they too would be very, very open to this kind of line of discussion. It's not about anti-party or being disloyal. It's really about just wanting the best for the state.
In the recently concluded or suspended continuous voters registration exercise, it's been reported that there are now 95 million voters, and about 12 million new people have been added to that list. 71% of them are people between 18 and 34. What do you commit in terms of empowering young people, women and people with disability in your cabinet? Is there a percentage for them, and how do you intend to involve them? Not as special advisors or PAs. What role do you have for young people, women and people with disabilities in your government and cabinet?
I wouldn't want to throw up numbers, because situations and circumstances may change and it would appear that one has gone back on their promise. I would want those numbers to actually be the outcome of a detailed engagement.
Is this
with
a
these
political
groups.
answer? I'll tell you why. Because Rwanda, for
Okay.
instance, had
Yes.
said, "Oh, you know what, 50% women in the cabinet," and they've made it happen. I think in some other few other countries that has happened. So why is it difficult to?
Well, those countries, you would notice that they're at a different stage of development than we are. You know, the stakeholder map in Nigeria and in Benue State, for instance, is not so well defined, where you can just throw numbers left, right, and center.
Yeah.
But I would want to say that definitely there will be a very significant quota of these demographics represented in my government, not only because they're women or they're youth or they're physically challenged, because I think that that's actually insulting to the demographics. I think that it's imperative that they come to the table with something to offer. And this is going to be the discussion that we're having. I believe that they do have something to offer. And I like the fact that you said not just PAs and SSAs without a portfolio, but we'll be looking to put the right people in the right places, as they say, round pegs in round holes. And for me, it's very, very important. I mean, as a young man, you can't imagine that it'll be in my interest to work with as many of these people as can, that I can. Yeah.
Very well said. Let's talk about Nigeria. I'm a Christian, and so the Bible says if the head is cut off, the body is useless. The role of the president cannot be understated. While at times like this, we are now trying to hold state governors accountable and responsible, having the right president plays a major role and trickles down to all the states. What questions should Nigerians be asking of the incoming president? What should Nigerians look out for in voting for the next president of Nigeria?
I think Nigerians should have a list of these questions on their mirrors, on their walls, on their fridges, where they're reflecting on it every day. When I listen to the conversations that are happening concerning the presidency, it actually gives me a lot of cause for concern, because I wonder if we're asking the probing questions. Before asking verbal questions, I believe that we should study each and every one of these people. No human being fell from the sky. Everybody was born, they have a track record.
Well, some of them can't find their certificates, so where are the track records?
well, their character. People know them. They grew up among certain individuals. What are they like as people? Are they honorable? Do they keep their word? Do they want to pull a fast one on anybody that they can? I think we need to start from there. Because if you have someone who's too intelligent, I hear the issue of competence come up, and it's very important. But you need to have competence in the right heart, because otherwise somebody can be very competently criminal as well. So I think we need to ask the issue of character. We need to ask about the issue of professionalism. We need to see what you have done before. What's your track record? You know, we can go into specifics on what are you going to do about health, what are you going to do about the economy, but the president may not be a medical person. But if we know from his character that he has the capacity to receive advice and take a good decision based on the information he has received, then you know that is a go. So these are the questions I'm asking myself, and I hope these are the kind of questions that Nigerians are asking themselves as well.
A former boss once told me that being a good person doesn't make you a good leader. Political will and being able to be assertive and to be able to change things when it's important plays a major role. How important is it to have the right people? How you said about round pegs and round holes. How important is it to have the right people at the helms of affairs as a president and governor?
You said it. If the head is bad, so is the body. You know, things flow from top down. So what we're seeing in Nigeria today, some of the challenges we face are nothing other than social, cultural. And this culture is actually signaled from the top. So it's very, very important that we get the right people up top. And if we do, we have a chance to positively impact the culture of the people.
What are your thoughts on diversification of the economy?
Andy, we have no choice. We have no choice. Two reasons why I say we have no choice. Number one, because we're dealing with a finite product as our mainstay right now. But number two, because we can. We have all these mineral resources in the country. We have all these human resources in the country. Why are we leaving it untapped? Look at a place like Silicon Valley. The economy of that place is based on intellect. We have that potential here. Look at the creative industry. Everywhere you go now, you hear they're playing Nigerian songs, they're watching Nigerian movies. How have we harnessed that potential to become something even bigger? So we have so many of these opportunities, and we must take advantage of them. We must.
In Nigeria, there's a lot of dependence on the government and government structures. What are your, and you said Silicon Valley, and so when I think about the United States, when you hear about the Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and the likes, the Gates and Buffett, these are people in private sector who have used innovation, technology and ideas to build the economy of the country. Even if you go back to the Rockefellers and the Fords and the likes, these were people who their involvement in developing their society helped build a nation. What's your take on public-private sector partnerships, and also the role of privatization in an effective government?
One of the most important factors to consider in this public-private arrangement is trust, an enabling environment. If you create an enabling environment, business will come. It's like a habitat. It's like where you have a pond and then you see mosquitoes begin to fester. It's very similar with a business environment. Many of those people invest in the American economy because they trust that their investment will not go to waste or will not disappear. There won't be any story coming out from their investment that will cause them heartache. Nigeria needs to build the trust that private sector has. Once they can actually attract the private sector and create that environment, there are also economic stimuli for the private sector. But I believe that it starts from trust. So it's important that we bring the private sector in. It's important that we make them trust us. It's important that it's Nigerian investors as well that are encouraged as much as foreign ones, if not more, and African investors. There's a term that I became very familiar with based on my work, and it's Africapitalism. And it's where Africa is stimulating the African economy through the private sector's involvement in business.
Honorable Tim and together, it's been lovely having you on this show. Very unrehearsed. I didn't send you any questions. I wish you all the best in your endeavors, and win or not, it's extremely important that we remain involved in building Nigeria and our great state, Benue State.
Yes.
And to our viewers at home, that's how much we can take on today's show of the week, episode of the Weekend Show. My name is Andy Maduka. You can follow me on social media at Andy Maduka on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Weekend Show also has its episodes on YouTube. You can check for The Weekend Show NG. And you can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Today's show is dedicated to the memory and in honor of Eme Eyo Eswa, who was one of the founding members of The Weekend Show team. Our heart and love and prayer goes to her family as they go through this hard time. As we get into the new week, do have a blessed week. Stay safe and be nice to the next person. We'll end the show with a performance by our guest artist. See you next week.